Welcome back to another Gadget Report. Let's talk gadgets, and today we are talking about holidays, summer break. Of course, if you are in the northern hemisphere, um, summer it's really not anywhere near. But if you are in the southern hemisphere, summer has just started. So today we are going to talk about planning our summer break, planning for our holidays, and of course this also applies to any other time of the year that you are gonna go on holidays. We are now in December. We are in the very last leg of 2025. As I said, it went really fast. So let's talk about planning holidays and see what we can do. So, summer's here and it's time to plan our holidays. I would say that if you are going on holidays now in this summer, you have already been doing this for quite a while. So, let's talk about planning our summer holidays or any holidays for that matter, and how should we do it, what I usually do, and the best way to get the best out of your holidays, avoiding crowds, avoiding paying premium prices for things, and trying to be or plan the holiday the best way possible. This is just my tip. This is what I usually do. As I said, there's no right or wrong here. Everyone has its own method, and of course, you can use another method and you can do it differently. For example, for me, I usually start first of all by choosing the destination, whatever destination I want to go. I usually have, and I think this is good practice, I usually have 2 or 3 alternatives because I start doing my research in terms of flights, in terms of accommodation, etc., etc. What's out there for that particular destination that I chose as my number one destination. But I always have 1 or 2 as a plan B, because if, for example, that destination flights are not there, or you can't really find any good accommodation or anything like that, of course you have to give up on that destination and you have to think, okay, we'll choose this one some other time and go for your plan B. So I usually have an alternative destination, unless it's obviously like Portugal for me, that I have my family and I'm not going to be worried about accommodation, for example. But in terms of flights, and sometimes it is possible, sometimes isn't. When you have children, for example, you really need to restrict yourself to the holidays, and sometimes that's when the flights are more expensive. So it is more than I would say it's more than essential. It's pivotal that you actually, if you have children and you have to play around with dates because of their holidays, it will be even more important that you do your research and you start planning earlier to get the best flights, to get the best out of your holiday. So, but that's another matter. I would start earlier, so I don't plan just 1 month before or something like that. I usually start planning way ahead. So if I'm planning, let's say, to go for a holiday overseas in December 2025, let's say, I would start planning in January. I would start planning at the beginning of the year. I'll start looking what's out there. Flights, there may not be flights there. I'll wait a few more months to start looking for flights, but I will still have a look and see what comes up in terms of flights and in terms of pricing. I'll see the accommodation, I'll see everything. I'll have a look of what's out there, and I'll start planning my holiday. I'll start playing with dates, even before you submit it, for example, with your employer, in case you obviously are working for a company. I would just play with dates. I would see what's out there, because sometimes just changing one day, the prices change dramatically, and I've said that in another video. So, and 24 hours is not going to make any difference. So if you just play with the dates even before you submit your holidays with your employer, in case you have one, it will help you, because technically it's not going to make any difference. It's just 24 hours, but in terms of pricing, it may make a huge difference, because you may choose a date that nobody really wants to fly, so demand is not there, and they obviously put the prices down. Just think outside the box. I think that's the secret, thinking outside the box. Then you already chose your plan B. You start, doing a survey, start a research of what's out there in terms of accommodation, places where you can stay. And I would say sometimes one of the mistakes that we are all guilty of is, if we go to a place, we always try to book accommodation in the center of the city, or something like that. And then we ended up, if it's one of the places, and for example, we've seen throughout the years, and this year I've spoken about it, and even last year, about Europe, and how European countries have been complaining about over-tourism and overcrowding, etc. So even here you have to think outside the box. It does not mean that you're not going to be looking or visiting those cities, but think outside the box. Do you really want to be on an overcrowded place full of tourists where you can barely move and you won't enjoy, because I know I wouldn't, because I don't really like crowd places? Or is it better that you actually look within the country that you want to visit? What is the possibilities? And if maybe slightly outside that bigger city, there is a nice place that has nice things to visit, that have good accommodation, possibly at more affordable pricing, and it will give you that amazing local experience that you so want. And of course, you can always get a trip to visit the big centers, to visit the big or the major landmarks. And I won't say that you are gonna miss on that, because that will be something that none of us want to do. But what I mean is that sometimes thinking outside the box, not going exactly to the center, exactly where everyone wants to go, will end up being a very positive choice, because not only in terms of prices, because you may have or you may find accommodation that is slightly cheaper, even better, but also in terms of experience. We've seen in for example, when I went to Portugal last year, I found Lisbon extremely overcrowded, and that's not pleasant. And I lived there for 30 years, as you know, and never used to be like that. And although I'm obviously not against tourism, I work in this industry, I'm obviously not against the tourists. It's not that. It's that obviously when it's way too many of them, it becomes a little bit overwhelming and unpleasant for all. So if we think a little outside the box, of course, in my case, I had to stay in the center of the city. That's where I lived for 30 years, and that's where my parents live. So it's a different situation, because I was obviously with family, and that's where I was, and that's what it is. So I didn't have much choice. But if, for example, I was just a tourist, I wouldn't choose to stay, for example, in the center of Lisbon. I would have chose to go somewhere else and then make day trips, things like that. And they have a relatively good transport system. They have trains, they have the fast train that takes you from Lisbon to Oporto, for example, Lisbon to Algarve, so north to south. It's a relatively good network. In Lisbon, honestly, I live there. You have the metro, you have trains. For the suburbs, you have buses, and they have a lot of buses. They cover most of the city, so it's not bad in terms of transport. I know it's not as good as it used to be when I was living there, because I still have family and friends there, and they complain that, for example, the metro have deteriorated quite a bit over the years. But still, it's much better than if you had nothing. So I think you're still better off because you still have transport. And if you really think outside the box and you go to a slightly different place, then you may have a much better experience. I would say that. And then the last thing that I think it's very important: set an itinerary. Once you have the place is chosen, you have set your flights, you have set your accommodation, then start looking for all those places that you would like to visit, and then set an itinerary. You can just do an Excel spreadsheet, or even in Word, whatever. You just set, or even in your mobile phone if you are very keen on using mobile phones, which I'm not. um, and um, and you can just create an itinerary with all the activities that you plan. And another thing, for example, a lot of things might need to be booked. And I've seen a lot of YouTubers sometimes going to places and say, "Oh, I wanted to visit this place, but it needs to be booked." And when I went there, it was fully booked. So, for example, if you go to the booking system and you know what dates are you going to be in there, and you book, then that's it. You are guaranteed that you are going to visit that place. It might have a time difference. For example, if you try to book, let's say, the Louvre in France, in Paris, in Jan for December, maybe they don't have bookings available, right? Maybe the booking system does not allow you to do that. But if you keep on looking until it actually does, then you can accommodate that, and you know that you have booked, and you know that it's guaranteed that you have an entry in that particular place. So this is something that I believe is very important. Look around, make sure the places you want to visit, go to their websites, see if there's a booking, if booking is needed, and if so, book in advance, have that booking done, have that guarantee that you have entry, and then set the itinerary. And don't overwhelm yourself. Don't try to visit 1,000 places in one day, because then it won't be an holiday. At the end of the day, you are on holidays, you are supposed to be relaxing. So try to make it pleasant, try to make it easy on you. Choose activities that are, or places that are nearby that you can walk. Of course, it's important to walk, doing exercise and enjoying yourself, but don't overwhelm yourself. I think that is the secret. Plan ahead, book when it's applicable. Have a plan B in case your first choice may not be a good idea at the time, and don't overwhelm yourself. So for today, I hope you liked this gadget report about planning our holidays. I hope it was a nice one. I hope you like my tips. I think it's easy, simple things that really don't take much time to accomplish. And if you do them, for example, the booking of places, it might make your holidays so much easier and pleasant. Choosing the place for accommodation, the dates, playing with dates, so you make sure you don't fly on those very, very, very high demand dates that where prices are going to be over inflated. It's tiny little things, it's tiny little choices that you may make that may do or may make a huge difference on the final outcome. If you have any suggestions of any subject that you would like me to talk about in our gadget reports, please leave a comment below. I'll be very happy to accommodate that. And of course, if you have any question, the same, just leave a comment below. And put a like on the video and subscribe to the channel with a little click on the bell so you get a notification of a new gadget report every week. Before I go, I would like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye.